Emma Thompson clutched her worn leather bag as the plane reached cruising altitude. At 42, with silver strands beginning to appear in her dark hair, she finally felt like her life was taking off. After years of hard work, she had built Thompson Aviation into a successful charter company, though few passengers ever realized the elegant woman occasionally working as a flight attendant actually owned the entire operation. "Never forget where you came from," her grandmother had always said. Emma believed in knowing every aspect of her business from the ground up. Today's flight carried mostly business travelers from London to New York. Emma moved through the cabin checking seatbelts, her practiced smile hiding the exhaustion of back-to-back flights. Running a company while maintaining her hands-on approach took its toll, but she wouldn't have it any other way. "Excuse me," a man in first class snapped his fingers at her. "I asked for sparkling water 10 minutes ago." Emma nodded politely. "I'll get that right away, sir." Richard Blackwell, the passenger in question, barely looked up from his laptop. Emma recognized him as the vice president of a competing aviation company. They had met at industry events, but he had clearly never bothered to remember her face. In the galley, Emma prepared the drink while chatting with Daniel, one of her most loyal employees and the only cabin crew member who knew her true position. "The great Richard Blackwell doesn't recognize you," Daniel whispered, amused. "Let's keep it that way," Emma winked. "I learn more about my competition when they think I'm just serving their drinks." As she returned with the sparkling water, Emma overheard Richard speaking to his seatmate, his voice carrying without concern for who might hear. "These smaller airlines cut corners everywhere," he said dismissively. "I'm only on this flight because my usual one was cancelled. Half their fleet probably isn't even up to code." Emma's hand tightened around the glass. Her company prided itself on maintaining the highest safety standards in the industry. "Your water, sir," she said, placing it carefully on his tray. Richard glanced up, his eyes narrowing as they swept over her. "You people should wear better uniforms. You look like you work for a budget airline." The comment stung. Emma had personally designed the uniforms to be both professional and comfortable for her staff. "I apologize if our appearance doesn't meet your standards," she replied evenly. "Don't get smart with me," Richard scoffed. "Just do your job properly." As the flight progressed, Richard became increasingly difficult, complaining about everything from the temperature to the meal service. Emma maintained her composure, watching how her staff handled the situation. She felt proud of their professionalism in the face of such rudeness. When turbulence hit mid-flight, Richard's drink spilled across his expensive suit. His face turned red with anger. "Look what you've done," he shouted, though Emma had been nowhere near him when it happened. "This is a 5,000-pound suit. I'll have your job for this." The cabin fell silent as all eyes turned toward them. Emma took a deep breath. "Sir, I understand you're upset," she began calmly. "I'd be happy to arrange for your cleaning bill to be covered." "I don't want your pathetic compensation," he snarled. "I want you fired." "Where's your supervisor?" Daniel appeared at Emma's side, concern evident in his eyes. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. "This woman is incompetent," Richard declared loudly. "I demand to speak to whoever runs this second-rate operation." Emma exchanged a glance with Daniel, who struggled to keep his expression neutral. "Actually, sir," Emma said quietly, "I believe we've met before. I'm Emma Thompson." Richard's expression showed no recognition. "I own Thompson Aviation," she continued. "This is my airline." The color drained from Richard's face as realization dawned. Around them, several passengers who recognized Emma's name began to whisper. "Perhaps," Emma added with the same professional smile she'd worn throughout the flight, "when we land, we could discuss your concerns about our operations in more detail? I'm always looking for ways to improve." Richard sputtered, unable to form a coherent response. Emma moved on to the next passenger, continuing her duties as though nothing had happened. She had learned long ago that success wasn't about putting people in their place, it was about rising above and staying true to your principles, even at 30,000 feet. The End Part 2. The meeting in New York did not go as Richard Blackwell expected. Sitting across from Emma in her company's sleek Manhattan office, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Gone was the flight attendant uniform, replaced by a tailored Navy suit that spoke of quiet authority. The Thomson Aviation logo gleamed on the wall behind her desk. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," Emma said, her voice measured and professional. "Especially after our interesting flight together." Richard cleared his throat. "About that, I may have been somewhat harsh." "Somewhat," Emma agreed with a slight nod. "But that's not why I wanted to speak with you." She slid a folder across the polished desk. Inside were photos of aircraft with the Blackwell Aviation logo, along with maintenance reports that showed troubling patterns. "Your company has been cutting corners on safety inspections," Emma said. "My sources confirm this has been happening for over a year now." Richard's face paled. "That's impossible. I oversee all operations personally." "Do you?" Emma raised an eyebrow. "Or do you spend more time berating staff on competitors' flights?" Before Richard could respond, Emma's assistant Thomas knocked and entered. "Your next appointment is here," he announced. "Thank you." Mr. Blackwell was just leaving. Emma stood. "I suggest you address these issues immediately, or I'll have no choice but to share this information with the Aviation Authority." Richard left in a daze, the folder clutched in his trembling hands. Once alone, Emma exhaled slowly. The confrontation had drained her more than she let on. She hadn't built her company to take down competitors, but passenger safety was where she drew the line. "You handled that well," Thomas commented, returning with coffee. "Did I?" Emma sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm becoming exactly what I've always despised, someone who uses power to intimidate." "There's a difference between intimidation and accountability," Thomas reminded her. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from her daughter, "Lily, don't forget Gran's birthday dinner tonight." Emma smiled, grateful for the reminder. Amidst business battles and company responsibilities, family remained her anchor. That evening, Emma arrived at her mother's modest apartment in Queens, where she had grown up. The tiny living room filled with laughter as 3 generations gathered to celebrate Margaret Thompson's 75th birthday. "There's my high-flying daughter," Margaret greeted her with a warm embrace. "How was your trip?" "Educational," Emma replied, helping her mother to her favorite chair. Lily, now 21 and studying aviation management, brought out a homemade cake. "Made with Gran's recipe," she announced proudly. As they ate, Margaret shared stories of her years as one of the first female mechanics at Kennedy Airport, facing discrimination and doubt with unwavering determination. "Remember when you used to bring me to work?" Emma asked. "I'd watch you fix those engines, telling everyone who would listen that my mom could fix anything." Margaret laughed. "And look at you now, owning the planes instead of just fixing them." "I wouldn't be here without what you taught me," Emma said softly. Later, while washing dishes together, Lily asked about the Blackwell situation. "Will his company be in trouble?" Emma considered the question carefully. "That depends on him. Everyone deserves a chance to correct their mistakes." "Even after how he treated you?" "Especially then," Emma replied. "Real leadership isn't about getting even, it's about making things right." The next morning, Emma arrived at her New York office to find Richard Blackwell waiting. His usual arrogance had vanished. "I've spent all night reviewing those reports," he said without preamble. "You were right. Our maintenance director has been falsifying records to cut costs." Emma gestured for him to continue. "I've suspended all flights until we complete proper inspections," Richard added. "But the press will destroy us when this gets out." Emma studied him thoughtfully. The industry had enough challenges without losing another airline to scandal. "What if we handle this differently?" she proposed. "My company has some of the best safety inspectors in the business. Let us help conduct a thorough review quietly. You implement the necessary changes, fire the responsible parties, and move forward with enhanced protocols." Richard looked confused. "Why would you help me?" "I'm not helping you," Emma clarified. "I'm helping your employees who would lose their jobs, and your passengers who deserve safe flights." As Richard left with arrangements to begin the inspections, Thomas looked questioningly at Emma. "He doesn't deserve your help," Thomas observed. Emma gazed out at the Manhattan skyline. "My grandmother once told me that how we treat those who can do nothing for us reveals who we truly are." She turned back to her desk, picking up a photo of her mother standing proudly beside an aircraft engine. "And I never want to forget who I am, or where I came from." The End, Part 3. 6 months after the incident with Richard Blackwell, Emma Thompson found herself standing in the rain outside a small community centre in East London. This wasn't her usual environment of executive boardrooms and first-class lounges. The faded sign read Wingfield Youth Aviation Program. Emma checked her watch. She had promised to give a talk to disadvantaged teenagers about careers in aviation, but now she felt strangely nervous. Addressing shareholders was one thing, speaking to skeptical teenagers was entirely different. Inside, 20 young faces looked up as she entered, most showing little interest in another adult telling them about opportunities they believed were out of reach. "That's her," whispered a girl with bright red hair to her friend. "The lady who owns the planes." Emma set down her bag and smiled. "I'm Emma Thompson. I was told you all have questions about flying." A boy at the back raised his hand immediately. "Is it true you started with nothing? Or is that just some story they tell to make us think we have a chance?" The directness of his question caught Emma off guard. She looked at his worn hoodie and defiant expression and saw herself at 16 angry at a world that seemed designed to keep her grounded. "My mother was an aircraft mechanic," Emma began. "We lived in a one-bedroom flat where I slept on a fold-out couch. So no, it's not just a story." For the next hour, Emma abandoned her prepared speech and simply talked with them. She showed photos of herself learning to fly in second-hand gear, described sleeping in airports to save money while getting her pilot's license, and admitted how many times she nearly gave up. As the session ended, the red-haired girl, Olivia, lingered behind. "My dad says women don't belong in cockpits," she said quietly. "He says we don't have the right kind of brain for it." Emma recognized the pain behind those words. "My first flight instructor told me the exact same thing," she replied. "Would you like to know what I did?" Olivia nodded. "I changed instructors and then, years later, bought the flight school and fired him." Emma winked, making Olivia grin. The program director, Marcus, approached as the teenagers filed out. "You've made quite an impression. Especially on Olivia, she's been drawing planes since she was 6. She reminds me of myself," Emma admitted. "We're trying to arrange some actual flight time for these kids," Marcus explained, "but costs are prohibitive. Most of our funding goes to basic equipment." On the drive back to her office, Emma couldn't get the teenagers' faces out of her mind, particularly Olivia's. She made a decision and called Thomas. "I need you to set up the Thompson Future Flyers Scholarship Program," she instructed. "And find out everything you can about the Wingfield Youth Aviation Program." 2 weeks later, Emma returned to the community center with something better than a speech. She brought news of a partnership. Thompson Aviation would provide mentorships, equipment, and actual flight time to the students. The excitement was palpable, but Emma noticed Olivia hanging back, her expression guarded. "What's wrong?" Emma asked gently. "My dad won't allow it," Olivia whispered. "He says I should focus on something practical." Emma understood the challenge all too well. Would he meet with me? The following Saturday, Emma sat across from Robert Wilson in his small kitchen. A widower raising Olivia alone, he worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. "I respect what you're trying to do," he said, "but flying lessons won't put food on our table." Olivia needs stability, not dreams. "Dreams and stability aren't mutually exclusive," Emma replied. "The aviation industry needs more than just pilots. It needs engineers, air traffic controllers, safety inspectors, all well-paid, stable careers." She placed a folder on the table. "This is information about our apprenticeship program. Paid training while she completes school, guaranteed employment after graduation, and yes, flight lessons too, if she wants them." Robert stared at the papers. "Why Olivia? Why our community?" Emma thought about her answer carefully. Because talent doesn't discriminate, but opportunity often does. I was lucky my mother understood my passion. Not everyone has that support. Later that evening, Emma received a text message with a photo, Olivia grinning widely, holding up her father's signed permission form. As Emma prepared for her next overseas trip, Thomas updated her on company matters. The safety partnership with Blackwell Aviation is working well, he reported. They've implemented all our recommendations. Richard's even been civil lately, almost humble. Emma nodded, pleased but distracted. Is something wrong? Thomas asked. I've been thinking about what success really means, Emma replied, showing him Olivia's photo. Building $1 billion company was never the actual goal. What was? Emma smiled, remembering her mother's words from long ago. To create something that lifts people up, literally and figuratively. She looked at her schedule for the following week. Board meetings, contract negotiations, and now, a flight lesson with 8 teenagers who'd never thought they'd see the world from above. Success, Emma decided, looks exactly like this. The End Part 4. The Thomson Aviation Annual Charity Gala was in full swing. The grand ballroom of London's Dorchester Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers reflecting off elegant evening wear and polished champagne flutes. Emma Thompson, dressed in a simple midnight blue gown, moved among the guests with practiced ease, thanking donors and industry partners for their support. This year's theme, New Horizons, celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Future Flyers Scholarship Program. What had begun with the Wingfield Youth Group had expanded to 10 communities across Britain, giving hundreds of disadvantaged young people their first taste of flight. Emma. Wonderful event as always, called William Porter, CEO of a major airline manufacturer. The video presentation of those scholarship kids was quite moving. They did all the work themselves, Emma replied proudly. Including the filming. As the evening progressed, Emma checked her watch repeatedly. The gala's special guests were late, and she worried they might not come at all. Then Thomas appeared at her elbow. They're here, he whispered. Nervous, but here. At the entrance stood Olivia Wilson and 5 other teenagers from the original Wingfield group, looking both terrified and thrilled in their borrowed formal attire. Beside them, equally uncomfortable in a new suit, was Olivia's father Robert. Emma excused herself and crossed the room to greet them. You all look amazing, she said warmly. Ready for your big moment? Olivia nodded, clutching a folder to her chest. I think so. Dad's more nervous than I am. Robert gave a shaky laugh. First time in a place like this. Won't be the last, though, not with her plans. Inside the folder was Olivia's acceptance letter to one of Britain's top aeronautical engineering programs, along with her Thomson Aviation internship offer. Tonight, she would be announcing the expansion of the Future Flyers program to include university scholarships. As dinner concluded, Emma took the stage. The room quieted. Many of you know my story, she began. But tonight isn't about where I came from. It's about where we're all going. She introduced Olivia, who walked to the podium with remarkable poise for a 17-year-old. The audience listened intently as she described growing up believing certain dreams weren't meant for people like her. Before I met Ms. Thompson, I'd never even been inside an airport, Olivia said. Now I've logged 20 flight hours and been accepted to university to study engineering. That's what opportunity does, it transforms what seems impossible into inevitable. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Donations poured in, doubling Emma's funding goal for the scholarship expansion. Later, as guests began to depart, Emma noticed Richard Blackwell standing alone near the charity's donation display. Their professional relationship had improved dramatically since the safety partnership, but they rarely spoke outside of business matters. Didn't expect to see you here, Emma commented, joining him. Richard indicated the display, which showed photos of the scholarship students during their training. My son applied to be a mentor in the program, he explained. He's studying aviation management at university. I didn't know you had a son, Emma said, surprised. James. He's 20. Lives with his mother since the divorce. Richard's voice held regret. I haven't been as present in his life as I should have been. Too focused on the business. Emma recognized the familiar struggle balancing ambition with personal relationships. It's never too late to change course, she offered. Richard nodded. That's what James said when he showed me your program. He was quite impressed, especially with how you handled our situation last year. Called it leadership with integrity. Emma smiled, watching Olivia across the room excitedly showing her father the donor board, which now displayed the names of several major airlines pledging support. Your safety partnership saved my company, Richard admitted. You could have destroyed us instead. That wouldn't have helped anyone, Emma replied. Sometimes the best way forward isn't about winning or losing, it's about finding the path that lifts everyone. As the evening wound down, Emma found herself on the hotel terrace, taking a quiet moment away from the festivities. The London skyline glittered before her, planes visible in the distance taking off from Heathrow. Thomas joined her, carrying 2 glasses of water. Successful night, he commented, handing her one. The board will be pleased. The numbers are good, Emma agreed. But that's not what I'm thinking about. She nodded toward the ballroom, where Olivia and her friends were laughing together, their futures suddenly wide open in ways they'd never imagined. When I started this company, I wanted to prove something to the world, Emma said softly. Now I realize it's not about proving, it's about providing. Giving others the wings I was lucky enough to find. A gentle rain began to fall, but Emma didn't move inside. Instead, she raised her glass toward the youths whose dreams were now taking flight. To new horizons, she said. For all of us. The End Part 5. 5 years had passed since the first Future Flyers scholarship ceremony. Emma Thompson stood on the runway of Thomson Aviation's private airfield outside London, watching a small training aircraft make its final approach. The morning sun glinted off its wings as it touched down smoothly and taxied toward the waiting group. Emma felt a familiar flutter of pride when the pilot emerged. Olivia Wilson, now 22, had grown from the uncertain teenager with bright red hair into a confident young woman. She had graduated at the top of her engineering class while simultaneously earning her commercial pilot's license, a rare combination that made her uniquely valuable in the aviation industry. Perfect landing as usual, Emma called as Olivia approached. Had a great teacher, Olivia replied with a grin, embracing Emma warmly. They walked together toward the main building where a special ceremony was about to take place. Today marked the official launch of Thomson Aviation's newest division, an academy dedicated to training pilots and engineers from underrepresented backgrounds. Nervous about your speech? Emma asked. Olivia shrugged. A bit. Dad's more excited than nervous, he's already in there saving seats in the front row. Inside the converted hangar, 200 people gathered, industry leaders, former scholarship recipients, and the first class of academy students. Robert Wilson sat proudly in the front, now employed as the academy's facilities manager. His journey had paralleled his daughter's, from skeptic to champion of the program that had changed their lives. Emma took her place at the podium and surveyed the audience. She spotted Richard Blackwell and his son James, now working together at their family company, which had rebounded strongly under their joint leadership. Thomas stood at the back, clipboard in hand, still her most trusted advisor after all these years. Welcome to the official opening of the Thomson Flight Academy, Emma began. This facility represents a dream that began in a small community center with a group of teenagers who had never imagined themselves in aviation. As Emma continued her speech, she caught sight of a familiar face slipping in late at the back of the room, her mother Margaret, now 80, using a cane but still insisting on attending every important occasion in her daughter's life. Aviation has traditionally been an industry of barriers, Emma continued. Financial barriers, gender barriers, racial barriers. This academy exists to remove those barriers, one student at a time. She introduced Olivia as the academy's new director of training programs, passing the microphone to sustained applause. 5 years ago, I stood in borrowed shoes at a fancy hotel and talked about impossible dreams, Olivia began. Today I want to talk about responsibility. She gestured to the diverse faces of the new students. When you lift one person up, they don't rise alone. They bring their families, their communities, their perspectives. That's not charity, it's good business and smart innovation. After the ceremony, Emma escaped the crowd for a moment of quiet in her office. A wall of photographs chronicled the growth of Thomson Aviation from a single leased plane to one of Britain's most respected airlines. Among the professional achievements were personal moments. Emma with her mother and daughter at Lily's graduation, the original Wingfield teenagers receiving their first flight certificates, Olivia on her first day as a licensed pilot. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Margaret entered slowly, settling into a chair with a sigh. "Quite the empire you've built," she observed, looking around. Emma smiled. "I had a good foundation to build on." "Your father would have been proud," Margaret said softly. "He always said you had your head in the clouds. Turns out that was exactly where you needed to be." Their moment was interrupted by Thomas, who appeared with an urgent expression. "The situation in Singapore has escalated," he reported. "The acquisition deal is falling apart. The board is requesting an emergency meeting." Emma nodded. "Tell them I'll be there in 30 minutes. After Thomas left, Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Trouble?" "Just business," Emma replied. "A company we're trying to save is resisting our help. Their CEO thinks accepting our investment means admitting failure." Margaret laughed. "Sounds familiar. Remember that flight attendant who thought you were just serving drinks?" Emma smiled at the memory. "Richard and I actually joke about that now. He's become one of our strongest allies." As they walked back toward the ceremony, they passed the Academy's motto painted on the wall: "The sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning." Outside, Olivia was showing the new students the training aircraft, her face animated as she explained the controls. Among them was a young man who looked remarkably like Richard Blackwell had years ago, but with a warmth his father had only recently discovered. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Emma said to her mother. "Not the company or the fleet or even the academy." "What then?" Margaret asked. Emma watched as Olivia helped a nervous student into the cockpit, showing the same patience that Emma had once shown her. "The fact that none of this ends with me," Emma replied. "What we've built will keep lifting people up long after we're gone." As if on cue, the training plane's engine started up, its steady hum a promise of journeys yet to begin and heights still to be reached. The end.